Good morning, all. I'm really thankful to Prashant and Dr. Kulkarni for getting me into this mess. She gave me a very focused topic, and I thought it's easy. It turned out to be much more than what I imagined, and of course, it has been educating, so I don't mind that. And thank you very much for really taking this initiative, and congratulations. So I will be talking around this and a couple of thoughts around, how do we go about this question, and probably leave you with more questions than answers at the end of it. The issue, and this is a very good article, and it really sums up what we need to talk to this gathering. I think the question is very well defined, and you know that in the past we thought that if at a certain time we haven't done surgery, then probably something has happened in the body. Conventional wisdom had it that by 1 or 2 years something switches in the lungs, and unless we and if you operate even later, even if we operate, that thing doesn't come back, and we have burnt our fingers in borderline cases, and so we thought there is a point of no return beyond which surgery doesn't help. So the critical question is, have we reached a place where we can shift the point of no return somewhat? And the benefit of doing so and the harms of doing so and getting it right, all of you are aware, so I will not spend time on that. The only wrong thing in this slide is that it says 90% shunt corrected. In our setting, maybe 10% are corrected. So the question is even more relevant for us. The percentage of PAH into a particular lesion are different. For some reasons, ASD get much less PAH. So whether is it a different disease altogether or it is the same disease in a different clothes, we'll talk about that. So the question is, can we do something where the point of no return can be shifted? And what is the evidence? It will depend on the definition of your yardstick. In India is the largest democracy, and we encourage democratic thinking, and all different societies have their different cutoffs. So if you play very safe and you operate only at 3 Woods or 4 Woods, obviously the question doesn't arise. On the contrary, if you operate at 7 or 8 Woods and then you take up this question and then say that all of them should be on vasodilator, and then therefore they did well possible. You can increase the drug market for that. So some society says 6 is safe, some society says PVRI is safe, and human mind likes to get a number, but all of you are well aware of everything which goes around getting that number right, and we know that number is at all, it's so empirical that it's not really something which we should latch on to, as we discussed yesterday. So other societies say that beyond 8 is a problem, so 4 to 8 you take individual decisions, and with that caveats, let us think what is the evidence. These are the couple of other societies talking some different things like 2:3 PA versus aorta, that may be a good indicator, etc. A couple of thoughts before we get into the topic is that even in a PAH patient, well Eisenmengerized, fully Eisenmenger patient, if you give them vasodilators, a bit of reactivity is preserved in them. So reactivity, as we understand, is not same as reversibility, and reactivity does persist even in full Eisenmenger. Of course, those patients have a little bit of a left to right shunt, and they have maybe a little less PVRI than others. Also, so then faced with this question, I asked myself that what is it, how much change actually happens with PVRI when we give these vasodilators, and did we get a good handle on that? So we reviewed all the big studies on all the vasodilators and tried to get a sense of how much PVRI changes with these drugs. So I asked my good SRs, and they did this job for me. Have a look at this. These are from the big valid data of the trials of the vasodilators. So the quantum of usual change in PVRI, mean change is, you divide this by 80 to get the sense of 1 or 2, is about 100 to 200, so it's about 2 to 3 Wood units in this patient population. In other bigger studies with larger number of patients, again it's about 2 to 3 with bosentan. With other ERIs, it is again in the same range of maybe 2 to 3, 3 to 4. There is a range, and there is some people are much more responders, so there may be some outliers. But on a mean area, it is in this sense. With prestanoids, it is a little different. So, I mean, it seems very clear that they are better drugs, more effective drugs than the other ones. And the change here in this was about 3 to 4 Wood units, but sometimes it was even 7. Of course, this could depend on what is the resting basal PVRI also. But by and large, when we are playing in this area of treating them with the drugs, we can take it, stand that it is about 3 to 4 Wood units in general. The same thing if you plot it. So the question arises that does it go on increasing? That means if you keep on committing them to drugs, do they keep on dropping more and more? Now we have follow-up data up to maybe few months to few years. And this is the same data set on graphical level showing near the same thing, but also making a point that there is a decline. So maybe there is some benefit over time. That benefit over time is very well described for prostacyclins. Even those which are not responders at all, no change in PVR on acute testing, on chronic year or two of therapy, well, very good study from Rubin et al. Lot of response, 5 to 7 units dropped. Other uncomfortable question which has not been asked is there a tachyphylaxis? And the question that Dr. Subramanian asked is that if there is a asymptomatic patient, shall I commit him to drugs? We don't talk of this, we don't think of this. That if I keep on giving the drugs, is there going to be tachyphylaxis? Some small studies in the very early era have shown that the change in the 6-minute walk test had petered out after a few months. And the same trial, the similar study was there also. So these are 3 studies, early studies, where we gave sildenafil, and all of them are showing that the mortality doesn't. So these are not curative drugs. And the basic disease is bad, so we really can't make too much sense out of a continuing mortality. But this question that is there a tachyphylaxis to the drug effect? From prostacyclin, we know that you have to keep increasing the dose. So there is a sense of tachyphylaxis with prostanoids. Does the same thing happen with sildenafil, bosentan? No one really knows, but I am just throwing the spanner for keeping a patient. I would rather say let the patient earn the drugs because they are costly also. So I would not commit a asymptomatic patient with this idea that should there be tachyphylaxis, I will have something up reserve, to use later. But the real answer is not known. Beyond that, there is a mystery in BREATHE-5, and I would like you to spend some time on this. This is one of the biggest talked about things. And if you see that the p-value in this came because the control group within 16 months has jumped up 3 or 4 Wood units. In my practice, I have never seen that within 4 or 5 months, there will be so much change of PVRI that you really get a statistical significance, not by way of drug, by way of change in controls. So I really do not like this. I do not know what to make out of it. But this is the driver for putting so many things in expanding the use of drugs. Well, another thing before we get into the evidence again is, we are all familiar with this. This Dutch group had outlined this, that the pickle patient where after closure of the shunt, the PVRI went up. And this study showed that the PVRI went up rather dramatically in some of them, even as late as 5 to 10 years. The median follow-up was 140 months. So even if 5 to 10 years later, the things can go bad, where you could regret having operated the patient. Having said that, this was a selected group of 22 patients. So whichever patient really did well is not represented here. So therefore, the question becomes even more difficult. So this is for you. So what I did was to pick up all the data of all the evidence in the literature. The question given to me is there an evidence? So I'll present to you the evidence and leave you for the decision making. These are the studies from the earlier on. These are the cases, mostly cases. And if you recognize, they are mostly from Japan. And most patients have ASDs. Now, Japanese don't like to get the chest open because they think the soul will go away. And therefore, they generally don't get cardiac surgery. And it is a society where drugs are available free of cost, if they can afford it. So therefore, not surprising that such data has come from Japan. So some of these are case reports. There are only 2 or 3 PDAs, mostly are ASDs. These are other case series. Again, you can see only a couple of VSDs are there. And these are some of more case series, about 5 or 7 patients. So this is the total literature about treat and repair and treat evidence. Now notice that most of them are playing around 8, 9, 10 PVRI, giving drugs for a length of time, and then the follow-up. Follow-up is usually not very long. The drugs all of them are used, ipoprostenol, bosentan, and sildenafil. Only few outliers are there. And that I have outlined for you, a PVR of 25, PVR of 17, 11. And they are really really look to all of them individual data. I went into each of these reports where the PVR is very high, over 11. Over 10 I wanted, but there was nothing between 10 and 11. So it ended up by studying all the patients where this thing has been done over PVR of 11. Now within all the limitation of PVRI, that is still the number that we talk about. So here is a study which showed PVR of 25, given some vasodilators and operated, and everything's looking good after that. If you notice, the PVRI has gone from 25 to 12, and the PA pressure has actually jumped from 87 to 128. So here's a very peculiar situation where PA pressure has gone up and PVRI has gone down. And the reason is because the RA mean was 1, RA mean is 10. So this is the invalid data. So 25 you can delete out of your mind. Now we talk of a VST series in which there was PVR of 17. This Chinese study, they operated on patient with Eisenmenger also. And the borderline PVR, their mean PVR is 17. I will show you the background data. They went on to use this strategy, gave the drugs for a few months, and operated 8 Eisenmengers. To me, this is unethical. all 8 Eisenmenger, 2 died on table, and 5 were worse than before. They did put a flap VSD closure, but the condition in 5 was worse than before. So clearly, Eisenmenger, you cannot do this. Rest of the patient, they went on to suggest that out of 33, 5 were living with a high PA pressure of more than 50, and they have a flap VSD closure which shunts right to left, off and on. 31, and their basic theme is that in 31 of the patient out of say 41, they could get a PA mean drop to less than 50 with vasodilators, and in 2 they had to close the VSD because it started shunting left to right. So I think 2 were the success stories out of 41, and though the hemodynamic details of those 2 are not available. But according to the baseline data, they were the kind of question that you will ask. That means high raised PVRI, very small shunt, and a PA mean of probably 15, 16. So those 2 for some reason would be a success story, but the majority of them in a VSD, I would think that this is not worth doing because the natural history of a VSD Eisenmenger would be better than this. And they are all on continuing drugs. So when we talk of treat and repair, we have to take a qualification that they are all continuing on the drugs, majority of them. Only 2 or 3 studies of all that I showed are the patients where the drugs were tapered off. But majority of them were otherwise continuing on 2 or 3 and sometimes including even prostas. So that is a qualification. So for VSDs, so far, very, very limited data. These were the baseline characteristics of those patients. That means they were sick patients, QPQS less than 1 in 8, which I just discussed. PVRI was 17 and a little bit of a left-to-right shunt. Now these 8 were very bad, and those in which the PA pressure fell and those in which did not fall, if they analyzed this, they came with the conclusion that the provocative test was the decider. That means there was a little bit more of vasodilatation, a little bit more of left-to-right shunt, and a little less PA pressure in those who had dropped their PA pressure less than 50 with the vasodilators. So it was a continuum of the disease, and you have to get them right at a right point, and maybe there in some of those patients you can do a little better. But if you trade off in a little later sense, then you really do worse. So where is that cutoff point is very difficult. And this study does not convince me that in a VSD this may be a good idea, unless you have an outlier. This is another study with VSD. There are 3 patients, which is a series of VSD patients. And in these 3, the case number 3rd was a LPA-PA banded as in childhood. The PA pressure at that point was high, but the LPA was banded. Now, if you have a banded left lung, no matter what happens to the right lung, you can connect the 2 and you are well. No issues about that. If you have one preserved lung, no matter what is happening in the other lung, you connect the 2 and you are going to be operable. Second patient, the PVRI in one of them, let's take the first one, from 15 to 8, and it's a 1 year follow-up, 2 years follow-up, is still continuing on therapy. So if current therapy and current status of affairs with vasodilators, patients don't die on table as they used to. So they have just survived, and if they were already operable, they have operated. And so I don't think the point is proven that in a VSD you should do this strategy on face of it. When it comes to ASD, it's a different story. In a ASD, there are a number of success stories where a convincingly high PA pressure, 106 PS systolic, treated with prostacyclin for 2-3 years, PA pressure dropped remarkably, and the surgery operated and everything looks good. Now I have a feeling that suppose patient has a idiopathic pulmonary hypertension, he happens to have an ASD. You give them vasodilators, prostacyclins. Now when they drop their PA pressure, RV becomes better. What the ASD is going to do? It's only going to shunt left to right, and it is only going to worsen the right ventricular load. So such a case, if you can operate the ASD, you could probably do even better. So surely, in that setting, that means you have given the vasodilator therapy for a length of time, you have seen that convincing drop of PA pressure, and then you commit and close that ASD, maybe that's fine. And so let us take the data of ASD when they were more than 15. Now this is a series of ASD. Notice the PVRI in this about 6, 7, 8. In them, you do it, vasodilators, little bit drop, close the ASD when it's shunting more than 1.5 to 2:1, no issues. When you talk of a ASD which is above 15, if you talk of a large series where 15 PVRI and surgical closure was done by steel, etc., clearly pointless. Do not close an ASD with a PVRI of 15 and beyond. Here, some of these ASD with a PVRI of 12 and 13 and 15 also won. After 2-3 years of long-term prostacyclin therapy, the PVRI did drop from 15 to 4. And then they closed it because the shunting was 2:1. And that's a reasonable job to do, and nobody would probably question. The trouble with this data is, when we gave vasodilator, how many of them did this, we do not know. Are they outliers only, or do they carry different mutations? Are the BMP2 or the SOX17 types? We do not know. Practically, you would have seen patients with a humongous large PDA, systemic pressure. You could put a device and everything crashes. So there are outliers of that nature where they don't develop pulmonary vascular disease. Or is it that the ASD is fundamentally different disease? I would venture to suggest that somehow, although histologically they look same, the disease in ASD, the PAH in ASD is a different ball game. and they respond to PVRI, they respond to the drugs better. Should you find a patient in that group which has really dropped his PVRI very well, how often you will find that, I do not know. But if you find that, then you can really use this strategy, with a proviso that they may be needed to continue the drug, and with all that it implies. Another success story of 18 PVRI. Now this makes another point. Here the PVRI is 9 only, but the RA mean is 18. So he's in gross heart failure. And this patient was treated again, and with a nice drop in PVRI, did very well. So PVRI is not the end of the story. So you could have potentially have a PVRI also, which is that particular ventricle is not sustaining that PVRI and going into failure. So looking at PVRI alone doesn't do full justice, but that is as good as it gets. So if you have a pattern like that, you can do that. So let us summarize the evidence in which we have gone, the same data set that I am going to repeat again. Anything above 11 in the literature, at least the 3 or 4 were not sustainable. The PDA case which Dr. Aiken reported, on balloon occlusion the PA pressure dropped 50%. And the follow-up there was only 1 year. I wrote to him, he replied kindly, and he said that after 6 years also the patient is doing well. So, but that I would have thought on balloon occlusion also with a 50% drop that he probably should do well, and I would have probably closed that. VSD was unethical. ASD 25 was wrong. ASD 15 was not really sustained because the patient is continuing on this thing, and PVR has dropped only to 11. When you have other 3, 4 with a PVR of 11 and 13, so a couple of ASD patients have done very, very well. And how to distinguish those PSD, I do not know. So does the strategy work for all? No. Does it work for some? Yes, with a moderately raised PVRI. You can probably do, but how often they do so, we do not know. So denominator is not known. If we were to use this strategy with a PVR of 7, 8, and to give the vasodilators to all of them, how many of you will then become treatable? Really, it is not known. One study tried to do that, but they pulled it retrospective data, and they found that 50-50 was there. Out of 13, about 8 were there who did not respond, and about 5 responded. But it was a retrospective study, so did not really answer the question. Are all drugs equally effective? Certainly not. I think prostaglandins does much more than ERA, and that is probably a little better than PDIF. This is just a feeling from literature. Should you find somebody is vasoreactive, then you should go for the jugular. You should probably use all the drugs and drop it as much as we can. And therefore, that may be a better idea. How long to give therapy? There is one case where therapy was given only for 3 months. The patient improved and stopped bosentan and never needed anything thereafter and lived happily ever after, for example. But that patient, I am surprised, I am not very sure, was there an acute reason for a raise in PVR? They did look for pulmonary thromboembolism, they didn't find it. So only one case is there where drug was used only for few months. Rest all drugs were used for longer time, and probably many of them needed even overtime also. Whether we will be able to stop totally in them, we do not know. So then questions are, how many are the responders? What is the difference between responder and non-responders? And is the disease the ASD by itself a different sort of a disease which does respond a little more than the others? And finally, there is a patient who was living okay. We closed the VSD with a flap patch. Now also with bosentan is doing reasonably well from 3 to become 2. Is he going to live longer or live better? Such outcome analysis will finally define this question. It's a very interesting, relevant question. We do not really have full answer. Treat and repair and treat may push the envelope further in selected cases, as you would agree. But as a routine, it may be a strategy for repair in haste and regret at leisure. Thank you for your attention.
So will you practice or do you practice this strategy in your clinical practice?
So in a borderline case, it's clearly operability is an issue that we keep debating all our life. Comprehensive analysis, if it suggests inoperability, then no question. If it is a borderline thing, and you sense that, I would tend to give a trial currently, because some of them are very good. In a ASD, I will certainly try to do that. In a VSD, depending on the age of the patient and the baseline data, I might think. PDA, we have another healthier way of looking at it, balloon occluding and seeing. I would think that cautious trial of 3 to 6 months and reanalyzing them is not a bad idea. The worry is that when you give vasodilators, they drop their pressure, they increase the shunt. So are you really going to do good or going to harm them because you are increasing the shear stress? It seems that a short-term shear stress is not really harming much. So should you find a patient who really drops PVRI very much, I will probably go and double the therapy, triple the therapy if possible, see the drop further, try it for a year, 6 months to a year, and if it really drops, then I will probably go ahead. Otherwise, I will not.
Subramanian?
Thank you, Shyam. It was a wonderful talk. I was also reviewing the literature on this until Snehal kindly switched the topic. I just want to share a couple of points. One is, people tend to report positive
Yeah.
studies and then they never report negative studies. So nobody tells you how many patients they tried to treat and how many they didn't respond. They will never report. That is one problem. Secondly, I found two papers which I'd like to share where PA banding as a treat measure is helpful. Now, the problem with vasodilators is it increases the flow. There are two insults to the pulmonary vascular bed. One is pressure and one is flow.
Absolutely.
When you give a vasodilator, it increases the flow, and therefore whatever benefit you get in the disease may be counteracted by the increased stress. Therefore, a combination of PA banding with vasodilator had never been done in a planned study.
Yeah.
But incidentally it has happened in some patients where they did PA banding and it was a partial band and the the PVR was still high, they gave, and they did surprisingly well. So I think that one area where we could look in is a band with vasodilators for these borderline cases who still have a left to right shunt, but high PVR.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that actually there is a flip-flop. Dr. Subramanian was supposed to take this talk, and at the last minute I said, no, I will take it. So sorry for that. But taking a cue from Batista too, it looks a very good idea that if you can reduce the pulmonary flow pressure by a band, the distal changes would probably regress. And there are one or two cases where they have shown that if you band it in animals with a PA band, the distal, even isomengerization change or a monocrotaline-induced PA change have regressed. So it makes comprehensive sense that you give vasodilator to drop as much as possible, also reduce the pressure load. Should the changes become very good, then, but in practice, whether the risk of that surgery will be tolerable, I agree, as a concept, it looks the rightest thing to do.
If I can add few points here. About the one fundamental problem, I mean, you people do it all the time. Are we happy and comfortable with the way we measure the oxygen consumption, which is the most important step in calculating all the shunts and resistance? So practically at a ground level, we are stuck with that, calculating the shunt and PVRA. And second thing, looking at the natural history, some of the patients in our day-to-day practice, sometimes they present after 5 years, 10 years, 8 years. I have seen practically. So following patients for 2-3 years, I am not sure. And third thing, ASD, pre-tricuspid shunts, going into Eisenmenger is not seen in early life. The real ASD patients who go into Eisenmenger, it will be the 4th, 5th, 6th decades. Even there you don't find very severe PAH, unlike in VSD, Eisenmenger or this one. So when you are talking about a younger patient, ASD with PAH, to my mind, it is almost always idiopathic pulmonary arterial hypertension with incidental ASD. Unless you are talking about a flow-dependent pulmonary hypertension, you use shunt 5:1 or 7:1 and having some marginal elevation in PA mean pressures. Otherwise, if you have got a say PA mean pressure of 35 with a 5:1 shunt, is different from a PA mean pressure of 55 with a 2:1 shunt or 2.5:1 shunt. So I think I personally, I had 1 or 2 patients where we did this street repair and I burnt my fingers. So they became idiopathic pulmonary hypertension patients. So one, I don't think this strategy is correct. The moment, as you first point you raised, the reversibility of the vasoconstrictor element is different from the reversibility of the structural changes. Once the structural changes start occurring, the genotype is switched on, the phenotype changes, and the vascular proliferation occurs. That I think it's a relentless process. You should catch them before that switch occurs.
Yeah, we really do not know in ASD Eisenmenger whether it is same, but there has been a thought that it may be a little different disease. Yeah, I agree with you. The pulmonary, that yesterday we discussed about the reliability of getting it right.
Yes, Dr. Sharma.
Pulmonary artery,
Yes.
then you can be rest assured that the other lung pulmonary hypertension is going to regress.
No.
Is that what you said?
No, I didn't say that. I said you connect the two, the patient will drop his PVRI and the patient will do well. The changes in other lung really doesn't, in a animal model it has been shown that if you transplant one lung with a disease into a normal situation, it does regress. How much regression would occur, I cannot guarantee, but I can guarantee the outcome will be good.
Because the fear, I mean, we deal with this situation, sometimes in MAPCA situations, sometimes in other situations. And the fear is that the pulmonary hypertension will affect the other lung and cause pulmonary hypertension in the other lung also. So which is completely the opposite of...
No, I can rest assure you, if your normal lung connected, come what may, patient will be well. I have done in a patient with the hemitruncus, in which there is ostial narrowing, one lung was protected, other lung was Eisenmengerized. We connect the two with a tube, and the PVRI, the PA pressure was not normal, but patient did fantastically well. It was
So
quite,
tetralogy with the hemitruncus, for example,
Yes, it was
situation, you can
right.
straight away go and operate, right?
of course, yes, without reservation. I mean, I'm little bit too sure just to make the point, but I have, because 1 by R is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2, that is how we simplistically think. And no matter what is the value of R, as long as one R is normal, the mean R will be normal. So if you have 1 by 50 PVRI in one and the other lung is 2 PVRI, 1 by 50 plus 1 by 2 will eventually give you a R value which will be less than 2.
That's why one treatment for idiopathic PAH is single lung transplant, no? Even if you put one normal lung, the net PVR probably...
Net PVRI
so-
comes to normal.
Band that RPA, invariably find the other lung, both the lungs get hypertensive. I think all these, many of us have seen that. You band the RPA, many of the cases we have seen where it was banded because surgery could not be offered and the patient go into hypertension. This was the case series by Dr. Nageshwar also. We had seen it. Dr. Ames, Dr.
No, so band could not even, maybe non-effective band, whether the band was not effective.
even tight bands,
Yeah.
so much so that the
So what happened to that lung?
No, this is not isolated case.
Ah.
I'm just, as a corollary, I'm saying that when you band RPA from ascending aorta, we invariably find the other lung getting hypertension.
Other lung is getting full blood, full volume blood.
full volume
So
blood.
that lung gets Eisenmengerized. But if that band is fine, you take out the band, connect the two lungs, and your mean pressure would still be within the livable range. It will be a little higher than normal. And if you do a radionuclide study, you will find immediately it is 9:1. The high lung is taking only 1. And there may be little problem intermittently, but finally it would settle down to a reasonable clinical level. I would wonder if you want to make any comments on that.
Yeah.
It's a provocative statement.
Okay.
Another
Thank you.
different question. Sorry.
Yeah.
A different question. Maybe I'll.
Can we just take it little later, Dheeraj? Thanks.